Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be chatting with you tonight. Topic is Sitecore Analytics and the value that you can get out of it. This is something I talk a lot to my clients about in terms of Google Analytics versus Sitecore Analytics. And I'm going to share some stuff out of the same case study I presented at Symposium. So if you didn't get a chance to see that, you can get a bit of an update on that story. This is me. So I'm out of Toronto. I'm at Nonlinear Creations. I've been with this agency for 10 years, almost 11. And I've been an MVP since 2012. So I am a Sitecore Analytics enthusiast. So let me dive right in. I believe everyone can be a Sitecore Analytics hero. This is a really, really important part, especially with Sitecore 8, of getting business value out of the platform. So as a Sitecore developer community, there's many different angles in which we need to be conscious and add value. Certainly, robust technical implementation, best practices, Helix, and all that. But on the other side, there's an incredible amount you can do on the data side, even as we wait for XConnect. This is part of the story that I want to share with you today, and a bit of our process and methodology that we use to even get baby steps of value out of this analytics database. So in a nutshell, our philosophy on analytics platforms in general, the vast majority of our clients come to us already using Google Analytics. This is a very common scenario. And the question is always, does Sitecore Analytics, should we use it instead? How is it different? Really, we keep it simple. We say, use them both. They make the perfect couple together. Google certainly has a very established maturity in things like filtering, segmentation, certainly integration with AdWords, and Sitecore Analytics is a very good buddy and gives us granular data and real-time optimization. And if you want, you can even make it a tighter link and send Sitecore data to Google Analytics itself. So again, we find that these are the perfect couple together. This is from a blog post I wrote. I won't read all of this to you, but I did take the time to make a little table of what I felt were the strengths between the two platforms. And what I'm going to focus on today is this stuff here. So I'm really passionate about what Sitecore Analytics gives us in terms of the reporting, the profiling, the engagement value, and the access to the really raw data and all the advantages that gives us. And really, it's all predicated on what I like to call data enrichment, which is, if you install a new Sitecore 8 and just turn it on, you're going to be collecting some basic session information. But if you take just a few moments and do a small data enrichment program, you can really boost the value you're going to get out of it. So my case study is Rotman School of Management. We have an ongoing relationship. This is the business school at the University of Toronto. So this is a bit of a word cloud of all of their programs, but the typical stuff, MBAs, et cetera. So we have a long-term relationship with them. They're fantastic, and they're highly, open and experimental. So we're doing a lot of our interesting work with these guys at the moment. So when they upgraded to Sitecore 8 last year, we realized that we could enter a new phase of optimization. So we have the newest version of the XDB. It's on Mongo. And the question we asked was, how can analytics and XDB inform our web optimization strategy? And alongside that, wow, there's a lot of hype about data science, data mining, et cetera. What can we explore and learn while we're doing that? So we went into the data science lab, Nonlinear. In terms of the business context for our client, this is a key point I want to raise just before I dive into data enrichment. So we actually started out with some really key business questions. And this, if you can start out by understanding what you want to know, it'll really help you focus what you're doing in terms of the analytics database. So being a business school, their audience is students, looking to do MBAs, looking to do Masters of Finance, that kind of thing. And they really wanted to explore questions in relation to, Do ideas and thought leadership influence student applications? Does it make sense to look at the students in terms of, financially oriented people versus creative? What roles do these things play in students deciding to attend? So really, really great questions to ask about the audience segmentation. So we started there, and then we kind of looked at the opportunities of what can we do with marketing data for marketing teams. And we kind of started with this one here. So lead scoring is a common mechanism used in marketing. We felt that something that helped us understand the factors that predict conversion would be useful in helping us test our theories on poets and quants. So in terms of what we did last summer, this is the roadmap we did. So we upgraded to Sitecore 8.1 in about May, and then this is what I'll share with you in a minute, which is really the key to everything, and it can be dead simple. Then we collected data across a couple of months, and then we did an analysis phase, and we presented the initial results of this at Symposium. So just to give you a sense of the pilot program that we designed. So I want to talk about engagement values. So many of you may be aware of what this is, but this is a metric in Sitecore, and it drives an enormous amount of the marketing capability. So a lot of the functionality is predicated on this value. So for example, the impact of a personalization rule or the outcome of an A/B test. And the basic premise is that not all visitors are created equally, nor not all actions on a website are created equally. Some are more valuable than others. So I'll show you what this looks like in a minute, but I always implore all my clients, just take 30 minutes, do it on the whiteboard. We usually use a scale of 5 to 100, but really what you're looking at is assigning a relative weight to things that can be done on the website. So a page view, an on-click event, clicking book now or whatever your conversion happens to be, playing with form fields, filtering a list, viewing the full article. So there's some micro conversions I'm mentioning here, but I also mean, if you're lucky enough to have a macro conversion inside of Sitecore, like a purchase, that's even better. So going back to the business school website, what it really looks like is here's a dead simple engagement value model. You can whiteboard this in, within 30 minutes, in my opinion, get the team together and who knows the website intimately. And really what you want to do is, 100 points we usually assign to the big bang. So in this case, it's apply now. And then we go down and give other things that you can do, sort of lesser point values. So filling in a form, viewing event details, reading an article, downloading a brochure. This is a pretty simple model. I think we ended up with actually 12 goals on site. In some cases, we have 20, or you could just stick with 5. But the point being, don't let this be an obstacle. And even if there's no appetite or mental space or budget for anything like personalization, doing this when you launch or doing this right off the bat will still give you big dividends. And it can just be as simple as you like. So once you've done that, you go in and you tag the stuff in Sitecore, and it's probably a combination of using the out-of-the-box configuration and maybe a little bit of development. And then the second thing is content profiling. So this is the other really cool part of data enrichment. So in the first step, we've tagged interactions. Now we actually want to tag content and start to build a picture of who somebody is by virtue of what content they're looking at. Another really cool built-in feature of the platform. So in this case, we wanted to distinguish, here's our finance people, here's our creative people, and then the client also chose to tag international and thought leadership as 2 other categories. So the idea here is that you create profiles of each of these, and then, and then we created the profile key sliders. You basically get a 1 to 10 slider value for each of the segments. And what this really looks like in Sitecore is here's a topical article on the website. It's about finance. So we actually go into Sitecore and we say, well, when they view this, give them 10 points on the finance scale. They also got 10 on the thought leadership scale. So you kind of increment those channels as you're clicking around. And conversely, here's an article about creativity, developing your creative intelligence. So in this case, we tagged it 10 on creative, and then it got another 10 on thought leadership. So again, the idea is as you click around the website, you're accumulating points in each of these channels, so you start to get a picture of who somebody is. And the challenging part is usually figuring out, what do you choose as these different keys that paints the most complete picture. And I would say it's a bit of a trial and error, but certainly it was straightforward for this, which made it really nice and easy. So right away, we saw value in Sitecore Analytics. So again, client already had a mature Google Analytics program that was ongoing. This added to it. So as soon as we started collecting data, we started to see these out-of-the-box reports kind of come to life. And really, that's where you need the value to be tagged. So right away, we started seeing the segments and the relative volumes of traffic. So this full-time MBA tag, there's quite a bit there. We can see creativity is getting a lot more traffic than finance right off the bat. And then in this report over here, we can see our purple line, which spiked in August, is our creatives. So that's possibly partly because of just time of year. As we know, higher ed goes through cycles. I know that they also ran a campaign in August that was for a creative-oriented event. So it's probably a combination of the two. But you can really start to see, we've segmented our audience, and then we can start to see which ones are driving most value, and then the creatives are winning in this particular time period. So this is really interesting insight that's complementary to what we can see in Google Analytics, and will just be an additional really helpful input into what we understand about what's happening on the website. Here's another out-of-the-box report in Sitecore. So a couple of other things I want to point out that immediately we can see here. So our finance folks are spending more time on the website. So we see an average of 6 page views per visit versus 5 for the creatives. In fact, 4 minutes on average versus 3 minutes. However, the creatives are driving a much higher value per visit than the finance folks, who are at 0.58 versus 5. Now, they're also getting a lot more traffic through. But my conclusion out of this would say, hey, there's kind of a small but dedicated group of really keen finance folks coming through here. Let's try to make this number higher and push them towards providing more value in their actions on the site. That might take the form of something like a personalization rule that promotes an event or an article, or just kind of nurtures them towards that apply now conversion a little more aggressively. So again, the beauty of Sitecore is that we've extracted this segment, we see how they're behaving, and then in the rules engine, we can target to them. So, if pattern matches finance, then promote this piece of content. So it's kind of a nice seamless workflow of tag, collect, analyze, target. And the platform makes it really easy to do that. So again, just taking the time to do some simple engagement value tagging and a little bit of segmentation, profile tagging can yield this kind of stuff here, which is really helpful. So for the pilot itself, once we had done that, we actually did some machine learning. So this was the experimental part. I had a really fun time doing this. So we decided to use machine learning to build a predictive model. And we decided to predict 2 attributes. So imagine that you have everything that we can collect from a session, all the behavior, everything that's passed through the header, all of those characteristics. And can a model predict for us whether they're going to convert or whether they're going to generate high engagement value. So I defined high as 75 points accumulated. That was a little bit arbitrary. It can be whatever you want, but that's where I started. I said, can we predict this with some form of accuracy? So what I did is I actually spent a bunch of time I took the extract from Mongo, and this is the kind of thing that will end up being much easier with the release of XConnect. But I spent a significant amount of time just shaping the data and doing some feature extraction. So I ended up with a nice rectangular data set. It was about 200,000 rows that were collected across those 2 to 3 months of all the traffic going to the business school website. And what you do is, so I used an external tool called RapidMiner to build my model. So what you do with machine learning, the 5-second explanation, is you take 70% of that data set and you train the model. So you say, here's your inputs. What can you build based on that in terms of prediction? And then you take the other 30% and you apply the model to it, and that generates the accuracy level, how good it's, so the model learns, and then we test how good it is. And of course, the more data you keep feeding it, the stronger it will get, and that's kind of the idea behind machine learning. You want to give it as much data as possible. So our data set was across 2 months. Ideally, we actually do it across an entire year's worth of collection. So what we ended up with was these 2 columns here. This is my data set. I actually ended up with 44 columns that I blew out of what Sitecore collected. So I spent some time just turning things into Boolean values and stuff. But what you can see here is this left column is what actually happened in real life. So in fact, none of this sample of 20 converted. And this column here is what the model predicted. So didn't get them all right. Some of them it got wrong. But again, the more data you feed into it, the smarter it will get, and it'll start lining up more closely with what happened in real life. So that's really the idea. And then what you have is this predictive model kind of sitting out there, and you can ask it, is this session going to convert or not? So in fact, we had a very nice level of accuracy. So what we found was that conversion was predicted most strongly by a few different factors. So visits to research areas of the website, that's really interesting, and that actually confirms one of our theories about research being a strong predictor, matching to thought leader pattern, things like that. And we also found that high engagement is predicted by a few interesting things as well. So visits to academic faculty area of website, visit to research area. So we're really seeing a strong representation of that stuff as a predicting factor in how people are engaging with the website. So what do we do with that? Well, right off the bat, we want to use it as an input to marketing strategy. I think in the big picture, we want that model, which is sitting out in space, to be operationalized. So we want the marketing team to access it kind of on a regular daily basis. But in the meantime, I think there's some obvious conclusions that we maybe first saw in the analytics and have been bolstered by the predictive model. So, one thing we can do with confidence, more confidence, for example, is number 3 here. So bringing forward ideas you can use, professor bios, with a lot more confidence on really high traffic, high profile areas of the site, like the homepage. So if you need justification for, the fight over real estate on the homepage, here's one data point that's going to support what you want to do. So right away, we can sort of tease these types of things out. Since that pilot we did in summer 2016, we do continue to see really, really amazing lift in value per visit. And the client spent some time focusing on the finance program. So, the value per visit metric increased enormously for the finance folks, and also increased for the creative folks. So again, there's a metric out of the box with Sitecore that you can use to show the impact and influence of stuff that you're doing. And that's just really powerful way that the analytics adds value. We've also added some more personas since. So again, we started with these 4 originally, and then there's since been a business focus on boosting part-time programs. So these are the folks that want to go back to school and do their MBA, but they're fitting into these types of personas. So I want to advance, but school must not disrupt my life. Or revitalizers, I need to take my career to the next level to be successful. So seasoned professionals, little disruption to their lives for various reasons. So there's actually a whole bunch of these, but this is kind of the next really interesting segmentation that we're going to pursue and look into. So that tagging's already being put in. And again, right away, you can see this starting to blow out who's generating the most value. So it actually looks like our yellow line has done some interesting things over here. That would be the skill upgrader, for example, which is one of our new personas. So really, this should be approached as an ongoing enrichment program. Again, we started with a simple enrichment model. We started with just a couple of personas, and now we've increased what's tagged in there. So the analytics themselves just become more and more valuable in terms of the insight that they provide. So my general advice is take the baby step, don't be overwhelmed, and then you can just continually build on this. And overall, the marketing features of Sitecore do really well with this type of incremental experimental approach. So you want to start, again, dead simple, really simple stuff and grow from there so that you can use learnings and build upon what you have, but also so that there's a comfort level that whatever comfort the marketing team has achieved with Google Analytics, that can be complemented and they eventually get just as comfortable with Sitecore Analytics and get really used to using them together. So in terms of takeaways, again, I want to emphasize that data enrichment is a key part of getting value from Sitecore. I wrote a blog about this, I linked to it below. But these 3 things, these 3 mechanisms inside of the platform are easy. And you don't have to spend, you don't have to do a day workshop to do this. Just spend a few minutes whiteboarding and it's more important to get something in there than it is to perfect it. And then you can take an iterative approach to making it better. Knowing what business questions you're asking. So this is a really helpful thing. You may not have any. You may just want to take a stab at it without this. But if you know what you're trying to do, it only helps you focus what you're trying to do, particularly with the content profiling, because there's so many different ways to do this, and it can be a bit challenging to figure out what angle that you want to take. Really understand how these 2 complement each other. So again, I did a big table of what each of them do, but if you take some time, if you already know a little bit about GA, take the time to understand what Sitecore Analytics adds to it and how it can be used in a complementary fashion. So that should really help you out. And then I do want to take a minute to talk about XConnect. So if you're not sure what that is, it's a wrapper around the XDB Mongo. That will let us access the data in a much more structured way. So all the work that I've done, basically normalizing Mongo, that should be made easier because we should be able to do API calls through this layer and call into the database and extract structured data in a way that's really flexible and usable right away. And then I think the sky is kind of the limit as you start to look at BI tools, Power BI, Tableau, those types of things. And really, what you'll start to see is that the XDB, it provides a slice of the customer experience record, the behavioral system of record, as I like to call it. Your whole digital experience may not be served by Sitecore. It might be served across, a couple of platforms, maybe Sitecore and e-commerce or Sitecore and CRM. But again, it's really worth starting with what you've got, with what the part of the journey that you can access, and start to think of this data here as one part of the big picture. So it kind of emphasizes how important it is to be able to take it out in a well-structured way and use it in these other tools. So if you have any interest at all in data mining or machine learning, just keep an eye on this and what's coming. It should be really cool. excuse me, and then this is Todd Mitchell's slide from Symposium. The real vision with XConnect is that it becomes a true repository for behavior across basically any physical or digital channel. So IoT, point of sale apps in stores, of course the website, which is where we all start. But the real power comes from pulling in as much of this as possible into the one place. And then of course the more of the experience we capture, the more we can do interesting things with segmentation. So that's where the whole vision is going. But again, bringing it back to what I spoke to in the presentation, start with those initial steps and you'll kind of be well on your way to getting to this eventual vision. And I'll just finish up by mentioning a few helpful blog posts. I always refer to these when folks want to get a sense of, where do I start and what do I think about. This one is where I have that table, quick wins for richer Sitecore XDB. So I talk about data enrichment inside of this one. And then finally, profile cards, some insight in this third one about how you can, what are the different angles you can take when you think of those audience segments and how they should be represented inside of the platform. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Amanda. Great presentation. Anyone in the room has any question?
Hello, Amanda. This is Anderson here.
Hey.
I was looking at the many profiles you built, and how do you build those profiles by tagging it?
Oh yeah, so so basically you go into Marketing Center. Hang on, I can show you quickly. Should have had this booted up, sorry. It's basically a two-step process. So once you've designed your strategy, you go into Marketing Center in Sitecore and set up the profiles themselves. And then once they're ready, you go over into Content Editor, and basically on the individual item, there's a wizard in the top right corner, and when you click it, you get a pop-up and you can actually assign the profile directly there.
All right, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Okay, Eduardo is in the line asking, he may have lost that in the beginning of the presentation, but which tools did you use to normalize the XDB data and do your data analysis?
Yeah, sure. So I used RapidMiner. You know what? I'm just going to pop over. I'll show you the previous question just to give you guys a visual. So if you want to set up the profiles or the engagement value, go into Marketing Control Panel here. This is a little bit slow. And the profiles are set up right here. So in this is my travel demo. So in this case, I actually have 5 different profile keys that kind of correspond to how you might appear as a profile. And then in my profile cards, I actually have 3 real personas. So Tanis, for example, I gave her 1 to 10 values on each of these profiles here. So she's very strong on, she wants luxury, for example, and adventure. She's very strong on those. She doesn't want any structure, so that gets a 0. So this is one approach to doing it, one of many. This is where we actually have a radar graph where we show this kind of thing. So once I've set that up in here, then I just go over to my content editor. And it's over here. So right here, enter the profile, edit the profile cards associated with this item. So when you click this, you get the pop-up. So if I wanted to assign Tanis, I would just select her here, click OK, and then she actually appears there, and I can hover and I can see the details on Tanis persona. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, yeah.
Okay.
I guess a common doubt, nothing to do, has to do with your presentation, but it's like a generic doubt that most people have when they start playing with Sitecore Analytics, is kind of the difference between profiles, pattern cards, profile cards, and all those things you were showing before?
Yeah, so great question. It's confusing. It can be quite confusing. The easy way to explain it is that, so there's kind of three things you want to think about in here, not sick kids. So there's profile keys. So those are these 5: adventure, group travel, luxury. You can think of those as characteristics that an individual person might have a different weighting on each of these. And these typically are defined, they're a slider. You can specify a min value and a max value. I usually do 0 to 10. So your profile keys are kind of step one. The profile cards are used to assign to content. So these are used internally to Sitecore. So when you're going in your tree, these are the ones that pop up for you to choose from. So when you assign them to an item, it means that, for example, if we assign Tanis to that one item, it means when they view the page in the publish site, they will increment each of these profile keys by this much. So, adventure plus 10, group travel plus 1, etc. So they'll start to accumulate some values inside of each of these channels. And then in your personalization rules engine, the pattern cards are what you use to match up. So I didn't give them the same names, but they're roughly corresponding here. So what it does in the background is if you say, if current session matches to this pattern card, then show X. What it's actually doing is you'll have an accumulation of these values per session, and it'll kind of do a Euclidean distance calculation to one of these three here. So you can think of profile cards are used to tag content, pattern cards are used to match the session pattern. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. That's the simple way. Okay, so the next question was, what tool did I use to do the data mining? So here it is, RapidMiner. So I played with a few. I played with Watson. I played with Azure Machine Learning. I really liked this one. It's actually a desktop app. It's a predictive analytics platform because their licensing model actually gave me access to a consultant. So she was the third part of our team. She was incredible, and she actually brought the statistics smart. So she's a PhD in stats. So really the team that we had, I can show you here, I have it. This was our team, just to give you a sense of the skill sets. So myself, I was kind of bringing comp sci and platform knowledge. Courtney was my client. She knew on the marketing team at the client, so she knew the business intimately. She also is a Sitecore power user, so she's very, very strong in using the platform itself. And then YY, she was our PhD, and she basically she came with the platform, which was awesome. She was so helpful; it was incredible. So just going back to this, that was one of the big reasons I used this one. They all have a similar concept in that you send a data set through a pipeline of operators, but this is for example, I have my read Mongo, so I just imported the Mongo to run locally. I have a read Mongo, and then it basically loops through and does all of my processing. So to give you a sense, I won't go through all of this, but it's, we're cleaning the data here. We're converting JSON to rows. We're adding columns. We're setting some global variables, doing calculations. We're splitting out child rows. So this was actually very intensive in terms of how does Mongo store data, because it's not a regular database in that some records won't have all the fields in them. So that was tough. So we had to normalize a whole bunch of stuff and understand parent-child relationships, etc. So all of this work here is a pipeline that does all of that. And what it spits out at the end is a regular a normalized data set. So here, let me see if I can bring it up. So what we end up with is this right here, my 200,000 rows and my 47 attributes. So just to give you a sense of what I did, so all of these zeros and ones here is, I basically transformed, it's a 0 or a 1. So if they achieved the goal of a few event details in Sitecore, they get a 1, otherwise a 0. So I had to think about how to, again, transform the data into something where the fields could be predicted in that kind of regular way. Eduardo, are you there?
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, Diego, by the way, congratulations for the presentation. Great stuff. One question that I have is, you mentioned like a few slides ago that you did some sort of personalization for groups of audiences on the website. Did you use what level of personalization was it? Was it just like content personalization, or did you use any sort of engagement plan to do that?
Oh yeah, no. So the personalization thus far has really just been using the rules engine. So taking advantage of the segmentation we did. So basically, if they match the finance persona, then show something special.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. Which again, I would say is a first step before you get into things like engagement plans, which take a little more planning and setup. So.
Okay, one more question. William, he's at the line asking what you think about the future of CRM integration with Sitecore to use the smart information that you just demonstrated us with pipeline, Salesforce, and so on.
Yeah, so there's a few things going on there. So I think it definitely ties into this whole concept here. So here's the CRM box. If you Google and read about the data exchange framework, which is something that Adam Kahn is working on over in Seattle, he's really working on a new framework to facilitate reading and writing between Sitecore and these different platforms. So we've actually already used that in one of our clients to read and write between Sitecore and Dynamics CRM, for example. So I think the future really is going to be some hard decisions about which platform is the system of record. So usually you'll have a scenario where the Sitecore served. The website served by Sitecore, and then CRM, either there's some lead gen forms that are pushing into this, and then the sales team does something with it, or it's used more robustly as an active membership database, for example, and they're logging in here. But I think the future is that there's some decision between these two of where behavioral data lives, and I think in some cases we might not be able to avoid replication either. So the other common scenario I'm seeing is that, the contacts or the members, whatever you want to call the individual people, are stored in the CRM, but we do need them existing inside of Sitecore as a contact as well in order to do some interesting things and sort of nurture to them directly on the website as well. So I don't know that you can avoid having a bit of replication between the two, but I think it'll become really important, again, to define which one is capturing what and how is it going to be used. Perfect.
By the way, you mentioned a data exchange framework. Just a small announcement that in the last Sitecore hackathon 2 weeks ago, one of our teams, the team I participate, me, Anderson, and João, the Go Horse team, implemented a module using the data exchange framework. And last week, we chatted with Adam, providing him some feedbacks, and he could let us know about what they're planning in the future as well, which is exciting.
Oh, awesome. That's fantastic.
Well, we are ahead of schedule, so we have more time if you want. Eduardo Moraes is doing another question. So for the SUG-BR Europe in May, we will expand on that, or is it something else you will be presenting? What are you going to speak there?
Yes, so SUG-BR, I'm speaking at SUG-BR, and absolutely the intention is so we're already underway with part 2 of this, so the intention really is to tell the continuing story of additional insight we can get from the XDB, particularly around segmentation, clustering, so getting some deeper insights on, so we kind of did this a certain way, so we started with our known segments of, here, I'll go back to them here. We started with these guys. So we kind of took a top-down approach of, well, this is how we look at the world. So let's tag that in the content and see what happens. The other way to do it is do a bottom-up where you say, okay, well, we just collected a bunch of behavior. what groupings of behavior would sort of organically emerge from that we may not be aware of. So it's more exploratory. So I think looking at it from both sides can be really insightful. But yes, in general, I want to share basically what other data science things have we been doing that are interesting. Yeah.
Cool. Amanda, do you think that if you want to apply the same techniques that you applied right on there for a different kind of website, audience, client at all, do you think it will be, you can use this experience in adapt to that, or will be entirely new, different work?
No, I think this can absolutely be adapted. So the pipeline is particular to Rotman's XDB, but certainly the concept of doing this tagging, asking some questions, some business questions about segments, I think this can be replicated across many different organizations, even just to start with the same insights we got here, but generally to start building a program of let's just get more value out of this data, because again, it's collecting and we want to get the most use out of it as possible.
Okay, but of course you have to make different questions after your data is normalized and all that, because of the differences in the business, I guess.
For sure, yeah. So what you want to do is have ideally really focused areas of study. So again, in this case, we started with asking, what are these two personas doing? Now we've expanded it to, we want to understand, or we want to target to and understand these part-time programs, and really the business goal being let's boost applications to part-time programs. So you want to be able to frame this whole thing with a really specific business objective like that. Otherwise, you kind of won't have a way to focus it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Great. Any other questions?
Amanda, just in the same kind of vein of Rodrigo's question, you mentioned that you guys actually had a PhD resource that you were able to leverage on this project. Yep. And whenever you started talking about like using RapidMiner and all these techniques, that's what came to mind immediately. Like, oh my gosh, you're going to need a PhD or a statistician to help you out with this. Do you think going forward that you're still going to need that kind of resource on future projects, or is this something that like Sitecore devs like myself could pick up, or is this going to require more specialized knowledge and focus?
I think we're not. So I'll speak for myself. I think we're definitely. So again, here's our dream team. We're not at the point where I think that the techniques are sufficiently known and commoditized that we could figure that out on our own. I think doing the mapping of saying, we can build a predictive model to predict conversion, or we can use clustering algorithms to look at segmentation. I think mapping those applications is within the reach of folks who know the platform well. But again, when you dive into configuring the algorithms themselves and understanding, what are the different ways to tweak a clustering algorithm to really get the best results out of it, that's where my knowledge completely stops. So without her really adding her expertise to that, we're certainly not at the point, I think, where we could do that independently. What's interesting, though, is if you start playing with some of those platforms, you'll see different levels of, I'll call, obfuscation. Watson, for example, spits out beautiful graphics of various statistics about data. I know it happens to be very fussy about the format that you give it, but they're really looking to make models much more accessible. And then the challenge with that is that you're not able to really get under the hood and adjust things. So the models are only as good as your ability to tweak them and tune them. So long story short, I don't see bridging that gap in the near future, at least for our team. I think we're still going to need her until we can build possibly a decent enough library of these that we can start to extrapolate more independently.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I actually I had the same question. Data science was a black box for me kind of thing. And I had done comp sci back in the day, but when I put my head back into it, I was like, it was a question. I was very curious. I'm like, how much of this can I actually do myself? Because, there's so much hype and it's so much more accessible now through these types of tools. And it really is, it's fantastic. But no, there's just a gap in terms of the methods and the real statistics, the characteristics of each of those operators. And I kind of came to the conclusion that it was not going to be efficient to try to learn it ourselves. And I think we're still, again, in a position where we just add the team member and make it easy on yourself. And, you bring the business reason for doing it and the platform knowledge, and then they bring the ability to tune the models. And then that seems to be kind of the perfect marriage as of right now.
Yep, that sounds really exciting.
Yeah, it is super exciting. I encourage everybody, put your head into it. It's so cool and exciting. And there's a lot of ways to learn sufficient amounts to, I'm really interested in the area of, so we all work in digital marketing, but what dusty kind of corners of the stats world can actually be applied now that we have these tools available to us. That I think that functionality used to be either a lot more expensive or a lot more hard to reach. Anyways, yes. Any more questions?
Any other questions in the room? No? Yeah, mathematics sounds really important for that. Showed some tables previously in your presentation. You can see by a glance some things caught your attention immediately, but others are like invisible, and extracting that is obviously not something you are going to do without some understanding of maths, and more than that, applying all that formulas. All right, exciting topic. Nobody else? Right, Amanda, thank you very much for your participation.
Yeah, no problem. It was my pleasure.
That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks guys for listening. If you want to know any more, I'm on Twitter, Amanda Shiga. Just pop me a question. I could talk about this for hours, so happy to talk about it. Okay, thanks guys.
Thank you very much.